When it comes to Yorkshire puddings, there's two types of people in the world. Those who can make them, and those who can't. So today, I'll be going through 3 different methods and troubleshooting each to end up with a one-size-fits-all solution. I'll be using the same equipment, the same oil, the same oven, and crucially, the same batter. Because today I'm going to prove to you that it's all about cooking technique and nothing else. I'll also show you the best way to store them so you can make them ahead of time, how to easily get them unstuck if they stick. After watching this video, you'll have the knowledge to take your Yorkies from this to this. So it all starts with the batter. There are a million versions out there, and everyone claims to have the secret. It's overwhelming to say the least. I'm going to share the recipe with you that I've used for the last 20 years, and it's always worked well for me. Is it the best out there? I don't know. Does it make a great Yorkie every time? Yes. I like to use a big-ish bowl so I can get some vigorous whisking going on. First, I grab 2 glasses, and I always start with the eggs. This recipe works by measuring the ingredients by volume, and using 2 containers to do the measuring is the easiest way. So then into the other glass, fill that to the same level as the eggs with flour. I'm using flour with 11.5% protein. In my experience, this isn't too important, but what is important is that it's a flour with no raising agents, so a plain, all-purpose or bread flour rather than a self-raising or cake flour. Otherwise, you'll get muffins instead of Yorkshire puddings. Then I pour the eggs into the bowl and fill that glass up to the same level again with milk. Semi-skimmed or 2% works best. But if you only have full fat, then just add a little water to it. I would go with around 10% water, 90% milk. Then I whisk the eggs a little just to get them broken down. Next I add the flour with around half the milk. This makes it easier to get a lump-free batter because the mixture is thick. Whisk that until smooth with no clumps of flour and add the rest of the milk. This recipe works so well because it takes away any uncertainty I have about the size of my eggs. If they're a bit small, it doesn't matter. I just stick to the same volumes of each ingredient. As an extreme example, I could use an ostrich egg for this recipe, use the same measuring method, and get the same results. Then if the batter is looking a bit thin, I can add a touch more flour. If it's too thick, a touch more milk or water. It's so simple. This is a common Yorkshire pudding recipe used by British chefs all over the country. It's common because it works. In the end, I'm looking for a consistency like double cream, thick but pourable, so it coats the back of the spoon like this. Now, for this first method, I'm going to follow what most home cooks are doing when making Yorkshire puddings. This is going to be like a basis method that I'm then going to troubleshoot and improve as we go through the different techniques. So first, into the tin, I'm putting a little vegetable oil. You can use whatever you want. The type of fat won't affect the rising of the Yorkshires. Whatever you choose, it needs to be high smoke point. So basically nothing extra virgin. Place that into the oven, set at 200°C for a few minutes to get hot. After 5 minutes or so, it's ready. You can tell because it looks a lot looser, more like the viscosity of water. Batter in and you want it to sizzle straight away like this. Fill them up about halfway, then into the preheated oven, still set at 200°C for 20 to 30 minutes. After 25 minutes, these look okay to me. Brown on top, a little blonder underneath, okay rise, not the best, but not the worst. For most people, I think this will be a 6 out of 10. One problem I'll definitely have is sticking. I'm going to show you how to prevent this from happening in the next method. But if this happens to you, the solution is something that none of us have enough of these days. Patience. Just let them sit in the tray for a few minutes and they'll firm up slightly. Then you can give them a little wiggle and they'll come free pretty easily. These are looking too blonde for my liking, so I would have liked to bake them for another 5 or 10 minutes to get a deeper colour. But because of this sticking on the bottom, I couldn't have baked them much further because this part is already looking too dark. And it will be tasting a bit bitter. And also they would have stuck to the tray even more. Whilst this is the simplest Yorkshire pudding recipe I've followed, it's not the best I've ever made. I want more rise, more colour, and no sticking to the muffin tin. So let's move on to round 2 and try and improve these Yorkies with a few simple changes to the method. I'm starting with exactly the same batter, just this time I let it rest in my fridge for 3 hours, and I let it sit on the sides to come up to room temperature for another hour. So 4 hours in total since I mixed it together. The only difference is I haven't added any salt yet, so I'm adding that now and stirring it in. Same muffin tin on the same tray, same type and amount of oil, and into the oven. Because I want more colour and more puffiness, I've raised the temperature of my oven. This time it's set to 220. And I'm going to leave that oil to heat up for at least 10 minutes. Batter straight in, about halfway up the muffin mould, exactly the same as before, then quickly into the oven. Speed is important in this moment. They need to get cooking straight away. The sooner, the better. Because I got my oil a lot hotter this time, I shouldn't get any sticking to the tin, which means I should be able to bake these puddings longer, even though I'm baking at a higher temperature. "28 minutes later, they're ready. I let the tops get as dark as I could before pulling them out. As you can see this time, none of them have stuck to the tin, and they all feel lighter, puffier and crispier. This is because they went into really hot oil, and I got a much better rise along this back row. This is because I baked them at a higher heat. And the 4-hour rest that the batter had will have helped with all of these factors and given me a deeper, more rounded flavour. But I'm not happy with the shape and the rise. It's really inconsistent. This back row is acceptable, but the front row have spread outwards instead of upwards. Also, the colour isn't as even as I'd like it to be. But once again, I couldn't have baked them any further because this time the tops would have burnt. So for this final round, I want to make the ultimate Yorkshire pudding. To achieve this, I need a more consistent rise across all of them and even colour top to bottom, whilst keeping all of these other factors. So this is where we get onto the things I don't see other people talking about in their Yorkshire pudding recipes. So let's look at the details. I want sky-high Yorkies, and there's two things that are stopping me from getting this. The initial impact of the heat of the oven and the fan in the oven. Look at this. You see this major lopsidedness that I got in the first 2 rounds? This is because of heat and air movement. The heat isn't getting to the parts in the centre of the tray because it's being blocked by the other parts of the Yorkies as they rise. And the fan is exaggerating this wonkiness even further. It's these two factors that are stopping me from getting that idyllic Yorkshire pudding shape, and instead I'm getting these mixed results. So, my initial idea to solve this was to turn up the heat of the oven. I tried 250, 240 and 230. Every time I ended up with the hockey pucks that give us nightmares. So 220 seems to be the highest heat that the Yorkshires can handle. This is where these oven thermometers are priceless. I can't rely on my oven to tell me when it's at exactly 220, but I can rely on this. And as the difference of 10 degrees is the difference between this and this, I can't recommend them enough. There's a link in the description to this one. So how can I get more heat hitting these Yorkies without raising the temperature of my oven? I gave this a lot of thought and I could only come up with one solution. I'm going to use half of the moulds in the tin. My theory is each pudding won't be getting blocked by the other parts of the other puddings as they rise, like they would when they're all bunched together. But let's see if it works. But what about the fan blowing all that hot air around the oven? I haven't got a solution for that yet. When I make hundreds of Yorkies in professional kitchens, I make them in an industrial oven like this. The beauty of this oven is I can control the fan. I can turn it all the way off, so there's no fan at all. But I don't have that option with my home oven. So this is what I think will be the next best thing. I'm going to use this piece of foil as a barrier to help shield the Yorkies from the air being blown around the oven. Think of it like a windbreak that you take to the beach on those 3 glorious days of summer we get in the UK. But of course, there's a 30-mile-an-hour wind, so you need to protect yourself from the sandstorm. It's that kind of thing. Now into the oven to preheat until that fat is smoking hot. Lastly, the batter. 4 hours of resting seemed to work great, so this time this batter has been resting in the fridge overnight. It's been there for 14 hours, and it's been on the side losing that fridge chill for another hour. It's got a little liquid on top, but once that's stirred in, it looks exactly the same as the other two. 10 minutes later, the oil is smoking hot. In goes the batter, same as before, halfway up the mould, and straight into the oven that's still at 220°C. After 15 minutes, I got my monumental rise I was looking for, but I don't want them to burn. So now I'm turning the temperature of the oven down to 190°C. This should give me the even colour I've been looking for all this time without burning the tops. After another 18 minutes of cooking, so 33 in total, they're ready. I've got light, puffy, crispy Yorkies with even colour top to bottom, and a much more consistent rise across all 6 portions. This final method has worked a treat. Because this process can be a bit confusing to fit into your cooking schedule, I put an example walkthrough on my website with timings so you can see how I would prepare and bake these on the day whilst handling all the other things that are going on. And as for storing them, you can just place them on a tray with a wire rack like I've been doing throughout this video. They can sit like this at room temperature for a few hours. Then when you want to serve them, just flash them in a hot oven for 5 minutes to bring them back to life. What I've loved about making this video is it shows the power of technique to the fullest. The batter is exactly the same, but the results are totally different. Go check this out next for a video that will show you how to perfect another part of your roast.